Hello my darklings, welcome to my little cottage by the sea, the place where I love to stitch and craft my way to a vintage inspired and sustainable lifestyle. In today's episode I'm going to be sharing some spooky sewing inspiration. I've selected a few pattern and fabric ideas, all based on some of my favourite gothic horror screen moments. So if you would like to sew gothic this spooky season, watch on. I've been a lifelong fan of gothic horror, so it was really hard to select just a few films, TV shows that I find particularly inspiring, but I managed to limit it down to 5. So I've created some boards which I'll be looking at whilst I'm talking. I've created a brew of some kind, a lovely potion to drink as well, and I've put together these ideas and expanded on them, so you can head to my journal on my website if you'd like to read more about how to sew gothic. I'm especially fond of Hammer horror, filmed here in little old England at Bray Manor, and one of my absolute favourites is The Vampire Lovers from the 1970s. This is loosely based off of the Sheridan Le Fanu novel Carmilla, which is brilliant. My first suggestion to sew gothic is this dress, the Mabel dress, because I really felt that it really gave that sort of damsel in distress. You could use all sorts of fabrics to make this. The Hammer horror were really known for their rather scantily clad damsels, often in wispy gauzy fabrics, and this is a bit of a throwback to the gowns designed by the great Vera West, who was the chief costume creator at Universal Studios through the 20s, 30s and early 40s. And I really like this dress. I've not sewn it, I should say, and actually most of these patterns I haven't sewn, so I can't recommend them from the point that they're a good pattern, but I know that this Mabel dress by Tilly and the Buttons has been really popular in the sewing world. And I think that if you sewed it in a muslin, and I've selected a couple of colours here from Merchant & Mills, the black Obs and a sort of berry colour which I thought was really rather pretty. I really like the sample that they've sewn at Tilly and the Buttons in this lovely Schiaparelli shocking pink, and I really like this pattern. I think that it's one that I may well purchase. I love the shirring on it, and I think it is probably got a lot of legs, not actual legs like as in a tentacled beast from a horror film, but just you could wear it in lots of different ways, style it up in all sorts of ways, and I think it would work well across the seasons. So I think this is one that I'm definitely going to be getting hold of, so that I can waft around like a vampiric damsel in a fallen down mansion, preying on the souls of lost young men. The next inspiration to sew gothic is one of my favourite TV series of recent years, and that's Penny Dreadful. Some people love it, some people aren't so fond, but I was totally enraptured by all the gothic horror in it, and Vanessa Ives is just such an incredible character, and Eva Green is really one of my girl crushes. So I've chosen this folkwear number 227 Edwardian gown, and I think it's just really beautiful. I don't think that if I were to make this, and I'm very tempted to, I would make it so that it looked Edwardian. I would sew it with this aim that it would be an everyday dress for now. I've again earmarked the Merchant & Mills muslin, which is really good value. I think it's only about £5 a metre. And I would love to find some Edwardian black lace to do all the lace details on this. I don't have any. I did start to look for some lace, but hopefully by the time the journal piece goes up, I'll be able to link some lovely options to go with this. You can sort of make it plainer or do it with all the frills and furbelows you could possibly wish for. I think it looks really lovely. I've never sewn a folkwear pattern, so if you have any thoughts about it, do comment and let me know what you think. somewhat naughtily, the next thing that I wanted to sew Gothic was a coat worn by Vanessa Ives. So as I've just said, I don't really want to make something Edwardian costume. That's not really what I'm about. I want to just give a nod, and her costumes in Penny Dreadful are really fabulous. If you haven't seen it, I really thoroughly recommend watching it. And she had this wonderful coat, versions of a similar sort of design, and they all had these wonderful collars which had either velvet details or piping on them, and one was in a sort of black textured fabric and the other was in this sort of more grey textured fabric. So the coat that I found is actually a vintage Vogue coat from the 40s, V669, and the wool that I found to make this, two versions of wool, were both from Croft Mill, and one was this sort of grey black sort of geometric woven wool called Como Tweed, which was £34 a metre, and then another was a boiled wool, also Italian, also £34 a metre. The fabrics are really, really good quality at Croft Mill. This is quite an involved make, but I think this coat over the shorter version of the Edwardian gown by Folkwear with some kind of really fabulous lining inside, and I've used maybe velvet on the collar. I chose this coat because it's got this wonderful collar and these fabulous details. I think this really beautiful coat is a fabulous addition to your winter wardrobe, perfect for swishing around the graveyards, maybe stumbling across the odd zombie or two. I have a real fondness for Tim Burton and all of his work, actually. It really resonates with me. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. This next one is one of my favourite of his films. It probably comes as no surprise. Sleepy Hollow. This striped dress worn by Christina Ricci is really fabulous, and I know a lot of people have recreated it and made versions of it. Again, I would like to sew this in a way that was suitable for day wear rather than a full-on costume version of a historically accurate as you possibly can, because that's not really, as I've said, my particular cup of poison. But this is a dress that really makes impact. So I found the Simplicity dress S8411, which is that sort of Outlander kind of copy from the sort of late 1700s, and it comes as separate, so the bodice and then the skirt. And I thought that you could basically make these and make it in a version, obviously this has got sort of you know, foundation under rigging under it to create that sort of very wide silhouette of a skirt. But I thought if you didn't do that, you could drape fabric on it to create more of the look and add ruffles and puffles and oh my, and then you could add the sort of details on that bodice. So it's not exactly the same, but it's not too far away. And I actually found a wide stripe cotton twill on, I think, My Fabrics. It's all linked in the journal piece anyway, rather than in the show notes, so do head over if you want to see more about these patterns and fabrics. Everything is listed there. And I just thought this would be really fantastic, and you could wear it with the Vanessa style coat over the top. And actually I'd quite like to do it in the red as it is shown on the pattern packet, because it is a rather fabulous gown. Another Tim Burton creation, and one that many people have really enjoyed recently, is the TV series of Wednesday with Jenny Ortega. The costumes were really fabulous, and I especially loved this outfit that she wore at the very beginning of the film, comprising this dress with the dagger collar and then this lovely coat. So the patterns that I've found for this, firstly the dress is a McCall's dress, and I've actually written it too small for me to read, but again linked over at my journal. It's not exactly the same as the dress, but I quite like the sort of vintagey 30s vibe of this. and that collar you could certainly turn into more of a dagger collar, and then you could add some kind of cuff detail to these sleeves. You might want to pattern hack and do slightly different sleeves. And then this ditzy floral that I thought was really lovely comes from Fabric Godmother, and it really gives the same sort of vibes as the Wednesday dress. And then the coat is a butterick coat, B63, I haven't got my eyeballs in, I'm sorry, is this sort of fitted coat. I think you'd need to make this a little bit longer. I'd probably leave off those pockets, because I always find pockets in the princess line, when they're kind of located there, they sort of look a bit strange when you've got your hands in them. You kind of look like you're having a bit of a shuffle where you shouldn't be having a shuffle. But maybe that's just me and I'm a bit weird. Anyway, and then I found this pansy jacquard sort of metallic-y floral fabric, again linked in the journal piece, that I thought would look really, really lovely. So those two together, sort of two different florals that still kind of went together, would give you a very similar look to Wednesday's fabulous outfit here. One of my favourite examples of Gothic horror is what I think of as 1940s Gothic, and it's all those films that were filmed in the mid-ish 40s that were replicating some kind of Victorian costume, and you get these incredibly over-the-top, bonkers but brilliant sort of Gothic style dresses, really not historically accurate at all, but there's just something sublime about them. My final suggestion for you to sew Gothic is inspired by one of my favourites of these films, which is Dragonwyck, starring the sublime Vincent Price and the beautiful Jean Tierney. If you haven't seen it, it's wonderful, and it's actually available to watch for free on YouTube. There's a black and white, which is the original, and then a colorized version, and I've watched both, and really the black and white is better. Do go and watch that, because it's just bonkers fun and really silly and just thoroughly enjoyable. The pattern I'm suggesting is this one, the Simplicity S9464, which is a really lovely pattern. It's a sort of 1940s vintage, and I've just made this in a black crepe, and I kind of did a bit of a happy accident in that you're supposed to cut a shorter skirt and add the ruffle, but I cut the longer skirt and added the ruffle, so I made a full length dress, and actually I should have sized down because it's just a little bit big for me sort of across the chest, but it was a really, really lovely sewing project. I really enjoyed it, and actually the next time I make it, and I will be making this again, I'll sort of do a little bit of tweaking to the pattern to make sure the fit is just that much better. I think this in any fabric would be wonderful, particularly maybe a Liberty Tana Lawn, a more wintry version. And if you did version B with all the lace around the collar and the cuffs, I think that would look really, really beautiful. But you could do this in a black velvet. I, as I said, did this in a black crepe. So there's quite a few fabric ideas there that I'll pop up on the journal so that you can really go and have a good old look at all my ideas, because I've just sort of given you the brief one here. Sometimes you can be quite disappointed with these vintage repro patterns, but this is one that I'm really pleased that I bought, and I'm really looking forward to enjoying wearing the dress over the coming spooky month. Those are my Sew Gothic suggestions, and I do hope that you found a few treats and delights to interest and inspire you today. As ever, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend the time with me here in my little cottage by the sea. I'm really very grateful for your company and your support. I hope whatever you sew this spooky season, it fills you with ghoulish joy, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Till next time.